Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the UNG Alumni 1873 Speaker Series. We're glad you've come out today to hear from our presenter. We want to first thank the UNG Alumni Association for sponsoring this speaker series and acknowledge our shared interest groups, which are the Women of UNG and the NGCAA, the NGCCA, North Georgia Corps Association, for their support. This is our fifth presentation in this series, and today's presenter is Ash Harris. He's coming to us from Wilkesboro, North Carolina, just near Boone, North Carolina, and he is a graduate from the University of North Georgia in 2014. Welcome, Ash. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Glad to be here. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Yeah, we're excited to be doing this. So as we jump in, I just want to kind of talk with you a little bit about your career and your experience at North Georgia. Tell us a little bit about your career path and what got you here, and maybe introduce yourself a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. I currently work at a international humanitarian organization called Samaritan's Purse International Relief. And that journey to end up here definitely started probably about a little over 10 years ago when my mother actually kind of drug me nearly kicking and screaming up to Dahlonega, Georgia. I did not think that school or college was going to be an immediate thing that I did after high school. I actually was planning on enlisting active duty in the U.S. Army. And she's worked really hard her life to keep me on a kind of a somewhat structured track. And she really thought that education was really valuable to me. It's not something that she had at her fingertips growing up. And so she really wanted to be able to give that off to me. And so, I ended up kind of compromising. I joined the U.S. Army Reserve in 2007, as well as going up to North Georgia and enrolling in fall of 2007 in their Corps of Cadets program as well. And did that somewhat simultaneously for about 2 years until including some training time as well. And then deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 through part of 2010. And a lot of things shifted for me in my life at that time, and ended up coming back to North Georgia and did a 4-year stint there from 2010 to 2014, and I was in the International Relations Program and International Affairs Program, and really saw kind of a desire to live and work overseas, work among different people groups, different communities, and serve them with the talents and skills that I had been given. And right after college, right after I graduated, I stayed in the North Georgia area. I had met my wife a year or two prior, and we ended up getting married in 2015. And I ended up in construction management, which was completely opposite of what my skills and my passion were at that time. And after about 2 years, we kind of set out to go back into the field that I felt called to be in, and applied to Samaritan's Purse, among other organizations, some federal entities as well. And about a month and a half after I applied, I ended up moving to Boone, North Carolina, and have been there for a little over about 4.5 years now. So,
wow, yeah, that's pretty cool story. And isn't that the way it is for so many people when they have one path and they feel like they're going to go one way, and then life just takes us a different way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of our students and listeners can definitely relate to that. So let's dive a little bit further into, maybe your career and life experience, and tell us a little bit about maybe some failures that you've learned from. We're going to jump into some of the successes later, but some of those failures that you've learned from in your life and career.
Sure. So I think kind of some context with what I do with Samaritan's Purse. I work in our security department, specifically in our international security. And so it's advising staff on best safety and security principles overseas as we work in high and extreme risk locations. We have full-time operations in extreme risk countries such as Yemen, South Sudan, Syria, Democratic Republic of Congo, all over the world. And, there have been a lot of things from the academic side as well as professional side that have brought me onto this team. But it definitely hasn't been without certain failures along the way. And one of those first things I definitely, as I mentioned, academics was not really my desire, my forte. And I think that really, probably somewhere around middle school, high school, I became very inconsistent, and in my academic approach was very apathetic towards a lot of things, and that had kind of some ripple effects, even all the way through my undergrad career. And I would mark that as one of my primary failures, is that I really should have taken that time that I had, and I'll talk about stewardship in a little bit, but stewarding that time well, time and relationships well. And so I was certainly a failure. But one of the biggest ones that I regularly recall, that because it kind of turned into a catalyst for where I am today, was pretty much the very first job, like career job, I had applied to right out of North Georgia. I did not expect myself to even apply to this. I was encouraged by a couple peers to do this, but I ended up applying to a government organization. It was one of those, 3-letter organizations. And I applied, and about 6 months after I graduated, I actually forgot that I applied to that position. I was like, there's no way they'll consider me. So I just kind of totally put it in the back of my mind. Well, about 4 months later, they called, and they said, hey, we're considering your application. Want to know if you're still interested in that. And that first conversation, which was supposed to be more like an interview, I was pretty upfront. I was like, I'll be honest with you, I totally forgot that I applied to this. If you could refresh my memory on what this role is. And they walked me through it, and that led to a few different stages. I went before kind of a seminar as well as a panel interview, and that went really well. And ended up getting an invitation for kind of what's one of the final phases of the candidate process. They bring you up to Washington, D.C., and bring you through some more strenuous tests. And I remember being really excited going up there, and I was still like, man, I can't believe I've made it this far. Some individuals and peers that I knew in that previous stage did not make it up to that point. And I ended up walking in on this kind of standardized test, and it was about a 3-hour long test, kind of a mix of what they call the GRE, a mix of the GRE and the Myers-Briggs. And I could tell you about less than an hour in, I knew that I was going to fail that test. And I finished it out. And then the next day you go to another interviewer, and he sits and talks to you, not necessarily about the test, but also about about your life, kind of what brought you to this point, and as a final stage to see if they're what you're looking for. And I walked into that conversation. I was like, hey man, I know how yesterday went. Let's go ahead and kind of wrap this up. And they don't tell you the results. That's another kicker too, is they don't tell you the results of the test. But it was pretty obvious that I had failed it. And I left that a little down, but at the same time realizing, like, I got to this stage that not many people get to. I know some individuals, colleagues, and peers who've gone through that process before, and none of them have gotten to that stage. And only one other, and that was as far as they went as well. And I took that and found that silver lining. And I was like, there's some sort of potential that they see in me. I clearly have some level of skill that they're looking for, a talent that they're looking for, and I have a passion to serve. And so I took that to heart as well. And that kind of thrust me on to pursuing roles similar to that, and reigniting that passion to work within the international community, as well as potentially serve, a large group of people working overseas in hostile environments. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a circuitous path, right? I mean, when you look back on paths, they look straight when you look back on them, but as you're going through them, it's like nothing really makes sense as I'm moving through this. Obviously, with you using your failures to push yourself forward, you're not letting them put you backward. You're always allowing those failures to push closer to success.
Right.
Which is, that's a huge learning opportunity for many people.
I'm trying. I fail a lot, and I know that a lot of people don't have this resource, but I do have a wonderful wife who really helps me get back up on the horse and keep going.
Sure. I mean, if you're not failing, then you're not trying. So,
sure.
Yep. You're not going to have failures if you're not trying to do something bold and audacious. So that's good. Let's talk about some influential people that you've had in your life. Maybe who are 2 or 3 influences that you've had that have pushed you along the way, that have continued to drive you to where you are now and where you want to be in the future.
Sure. One of the first ones that comes to mind, obviously kind of going in chronological order, would be my mother. Again, she has always been the one who's instilled a work ethic in me, a good work ethic in me. She's always persevered through a lot of trials, and I kind of like to say that we grew up together, and very much so. And so she, things that she did not have growing up and mistakes that she made, she would often hand those off to me and really encourage me not to make those same mistakes. And I see myself making mistakes that, I will end up hopefully handing off to my children and encouraging them not to do certain things. But she definitely was kind of that cornerstone influence in my life. And I also think about Dr. Harris, Dr. Christian Harris. He's in the Political Science International Affairs Department there at University of North Georgia. And he was my advisor all the way through my undergrad. And he was always so gracious to me. There are times where even if I couldn't sense that I was struggling with whether it was a workload or something like that, he was always keenly aware of that and would help me prioritize certain things over others, and kept me on track. I think that was just incredible to have him alongside. And it's, there were others in that department as well. I think about Dr. Greathouse, Dr. Miner, as well as Dr. Armstrong Williams. All of them have been influential in my undergrad career as well as in my current graduate program there at UNG as well. And then last but certainly not least, I would say it's a group of men and basically a family of people there in North Georgia and Dahlonega. Most of them stem from a church called Christ Family Church, and Nathan Rayner is the pastor there. But Clay Naylor, and John Overton, all of them are UNG alumni. And they really took me in post-Afghanistan, and really were, again, a lot of grace there over a couple of years. And to this day, even though I don't live in proximity to any of them, we still keep up with one another and try to see them at least once a year as well. So they've been just significant influences in my life. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, to be able to continue to stay in touch with those people and work back and forth with them, you help influence them and they influence you. I'm sure that's a two-way street for all of these people. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, that's good. I would think so, having gotten to know you a little bit here. So, as you've moved through your career, what skills do you think have been most successful for you to get where you are now? And what type of person do you need to be in order to be successful there?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Great question. There are a lot of, skills that I've had to learn and hone over the years. But one of the things I've learned the most, especially in the last year, but that I realized would have even helped me earlier on, is what I would call is interpersonal skills, or really like diplomacy is how I would actually define that. Really trying to, as we work and we communicate with other entities, I'm a support department. The security department is a support department to our humanitarian work, to our other departments that are kind of the doers. And I've got to regularly be able to see things from their perspective and see what their objective, their mission is, and then come to them with solutions that benefit both of us. And so from security, obviously, it's risk management, and we want to make sure that our staff are safe and secure, but also some people would say the easiest way to do that is to not go into those extreme risk locations, obviously. However, we know that there is work to be done there. We know that there are people to be served there. And so we really want to make sure that we come to these good levels of compromise and collaboration to be able to be effective together in those kinds of environments. And that ultimately comes with being able to sit down at a table and talk to someone and understand where they're coming from, understand what their mission is, and then how we can integrate and collaborate, integrate our skill and our resources into that, and then collaborate together be effective. So that's one of I would say probably the diplomacy being the best skill that I have really tried to hone over the past few years.
So those the soft skills and diplomacy, some employers call those employability skills. How important do you think it is for students, to take the time to really hone those skills while they have the ability to do it in sort of a laboratory type of a setting at university?
Yeah, it's crucial. A lot of individuals, a lot of students can get really sucked into the academic side of things, and especially in international affairs, it's very research driven. You're reading a lot and you're writing a lot, and that's certainly a major part of what I do. A lot of research, a lot of analysis, a lot of understanding what the environment looks like. However, a lot of people can become so introverted or introspective even and focus on what's in front of them, what their mission is, what they need to do. And they forget that, you're now working in a larger organization, you're working on a larger team, et cetera. And so any chance you can get, find ways to kind of break outside of the pages, I guess is a way that I would describe that. Yeah.
Sure. Put the books down from time to time and look who's standing around you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Were there any student organizations at North Georgia or extracurricular type activities that kind of pushed you in that direction as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So one of them was the Political Science and International Affairs club that we had, or group that we had. I was involved in that for a year or so. And that was just a neat opportunity to be able to kind of not just necessarily network, but also just collaborate on extracurricular activities or recreational activities with students within my peers within my own department. But then also the biggest organizational influence for me at North Georgia was the UNG Men's Rugby Club. I joined that in 2011. And I was active in that for 3 years through 2013. And it was significant, both from a team building perspective, obviously playing on the pitch with my teammates and learning the game of rugby. I didn't know anything about it before I started playing. And but then also in the politics of it, it was a club organization. And I ended up I started off as the treasurer, then treasurer, secretary, and then ultimately the vice president of the club. And that allowed me to not just interact with my teammates, but also interact with other entities within the rugby world, the other rugby clubs, as well as even the recreational department and other recreational clubs there. So you think about all the variety of sport clubs that are there at North Georgia. I think at the time there was an equestrian team, a rock climbing team. All of them, and we're really trying to work together to benefit each of our own clubs, but ultimately to be able to represent North Georgia well in the sport that we are playing. And that was a huge opportunity for me to find those opportunities to work on funding, sponsorships, and whatnot together with those other clubs and their representatives.
Yeah, a lot of learning experiences and the continual desire to learn there is just kind of a part of your life. It's just, it's fantastic. So with that, what would you say are some of your career aspirations as you've moved through Samaritan's Purse and other ideas have popped in and out of your head? What are you thinking for career aspirations?
Yeah, so this kind of actually dates back to my very last semester at North Georgia, when there was a diplomat in residence from the U.S. State Department who came to North Georgia. And my wife and I have, not since we met, but kind of individually, and then when we met, we had a desire to live and work in either the Middle East or East Africa. And for some reason, I've always felt called to kind of do that while supporting my country in some way. Somewhat of a sense, I guess, of patriotism that's left over from the Army and as a citizen of the U.S. And when this diplomat in residence came, he spoke for a little over an hour about the life of a foreign service officer. And I was like, oh, that is so cool. Like, that's what I want to do. And I ended up taking the FSOT, the Foreign Service Officer test, I think the year after I graduated. And I failed it by 0.5 points. And you have to wait a whole year to take it again, which means, I have plenty of time to make up learn the 0.5 that I missed. And so I ended up taking it the following year and passed. And then got to the second phase, did not make it past that second phase. And that second phase is mostly based on experience and specific projects and things like that. And then I took it again the following year and then passed it again and got to the same exact phase and did not have essentially the experience and qualifications to move on past that phase. And so at that point, I was really starting to realize time and experience is what was going to be needed. It wasn't something that I could go back and learn immediately, certify myself in, and then go and pass, get through that second phase. And so I really needed experience. And, I just set that on the back burner and ended up here at Samaritan's Purse, where it really actually helped hone a lot of the skills I do hope to bring to the Foreign Service. And I applied again in November of 2019. And ended up in November of 2020, after several reviews of my application and stuff, ended up doing a panel interview and exams in DC in November of 2020, and ended up signing a conditional offer of employment with the U.S. State Department to go be in their Foreign Service. And so I was, still very excited. Obviously, who knows how long that's going to take. We're currently in the the investigation process for that, but my family and I are very excited and hope to be able to kind of find the merging of my time in the Army, my experiences at North Georgia, and education from North Georgia, as well as my obviously experience here at Samaritan's Purse, potentially seeing that move into this opportunity to be overseas with my family with the U.S. State Department. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of our current students and alumni can relate to that, sense of wanting to serve and wanting to, show their patriotism in their career. And so that's awesome to see that you're doing that. And maybe one day in the future, we'll have a Where Are They Now? And we'll be doing this kind of interview from somewhere else in the world.
We'll see. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. What sort of advice would you like to give to our listeners, to students, alumni? What's the biggest bit of advice that you could share?
Sure. Stewardship. Learn the meaning of stewardship. And at first, I thought about stewarding our time well, and we really don't have as much time as we think we do here on this earth. And but it doesn't just have to do with our time. It means stewarding our relationships well, stewarding the opportunities that we've been given, the resources we've been given. And there's it's a Bible verse that comes to mind, and that really has been kind of constantly replaying in my mind over the past few months. But it's in Proverbs, and it says, "I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man." And when I read that and when I reflect on that, I'm realizing, how much I've been given in a lot of different facets in my life, and I really want to take as much opportunity as I can to steward those things well. And I have a family now. I have a wife and two daughters. And I'm really trying to learn as we're, changing kind of trajectories or moving in different seasons of life, stewarding those relationships as best I can to like my mother did, and really trying to ultimately give what I have off to my children as well, and so that they can continue building on what's been given to me. So,
yeah, that's just such great advice. Stewarding your time well. So we have a few more minutes here, and I guess my final question is going to be, sharing something. Can you share something about your time at North Georgia? Something that happened to you while you were there, or maybe someone you met along the way?
Sure. Yeah. Last but certainly not least question here, and it's a really neat experience, and I can't guarantee this for the rest of the people that attend to North Georgia, but I did meet my wife. There's a fellow student in the International Affairs program, and we actually met in my junior year, her senior year. I was a couple years behind because of the Army, and we met in a class called International Political Economy. Hands down the most difficult class in our curriculum. But thankfully I had her to at least, enjoy the friendship and cultivation of that early relationship. We met in that class, and it actually came about, it's Dr. Armstrong's class, I believe, that on day one, as an introduction to the class, she had us go through and name a unique thing about ourselves as an introduction to ourselves. And if someone else had that characteristic or that quality, whatever it was, that interest, it was not unique to you, and you had to name something else. And so my wife and I debate today on who went first. We did not know each other at this time. This was our first day meeting. And she said that she would like to live in Somalia one day. And already having a kind of an inkling towards work in that region, and even specifically in Somalia, I spoke up and I said, well, actually, I would like to work in Somalia or live in Somalia one day. And so she turns around, looks at me, and she's like, yeah, that's a bizarre thing. But she names another thing. She says, well, I like to go barefoot. I like to walk around barefoot, not just at my home, but like all over the place. And I actually was kind of known as walking around campus barefoot a lot of the time. And I was actually barefoot that day too. I was like, well, actually, it's something I enjoy doing regularly as well. So I guess you'll have to find something else that's unique. We can't remember what she chose after that, but she was getting pretty irritated. But afterwards, we introduced ourselves to each other, talked about especially that original desire to live and work in Somalia and among Somali people groups, and sparked a friendship. For me, I wanted more than that. I actually tried to pursue her twice. A few months later, and she rejected me. A few months later went by. I tried again. She rejected me. We both went overseas to do different stuff within our internship and our study abroad. And about almost a year later, I returned after a 5-month stint in Latin America, and just approached her again, and told her that I still had the same affections that I had for her previously. And I guess that third time was the charm. And so, yeah, we started dating then, got married about a year and a half later, and we've been, we're in our 6th year of marriage now. So yeah, going towards our 7th year anniversary. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think you're right that not everybody's going to find their spouse at North Georgia, but there are a lot of great stories similar to yours at North Georgia, which is just awesome to see and hear, and see the lives that those people create after they leave North Georgia. Yeah. So yeah, really, really cool. Well, Ash, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this interview. I'm excited to see how your career progresses. It's already gone really well. But like I say, I think it'd be fantastic for us to do one of these again, sometime in the future when you're in Somalia, possibly. If we can get a live feed out of there, we'll
one does not simply walk into Somalia. That's a quote that I regularly tell myself. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see where we end up for sure. Yeah,
that's great. That's fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much, Ash. If anybody who's listening today wants to follow up and ask Ash any questions, he's graciously allowed us to give out his email address, and so you can reach out to him at asharr2142@gmail.com. And we'll have this information as well if you need it. But that's asharr2142@gmail.com. And thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that we'll have some people reaching out to you to ask for some advice. The successes that you found as you've gone through failure, there's a huge amount of lessons to learn from there. And so
thanks so much, Stephen, for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Of course. Thank the UNG Alumni Association. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. And we do want to thank the Alumni Association for sponsoring the 1873 Speaker Series. And if listeners out there are not a member already, we'd love to have you as a member. And you can join us by visiting the website at ungalumni.org, ungalumni.org. We'd love to have you there. And also on our website, we'll have all of our previous interviews, as well as in the near future, we'll have this one posted as well. Thanks again, Ash.
Hey, thank you.